Happy Tech Talk Tuesday, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Let's do a little heads up. Let me know if you hear me. I'll put a little bit of stuff in the background here, more fun to look at than that. Hey, John. John and John. What's up, y'all? Hey, David. I'll sit on this stool for a minute and talk to y'all for a quickie. We'll catch up right quick here. And I'm gonna move around the shop a little bit today and show you all some stuff that's going on here at Star Racing. It was Star Racing and then it was Star Power, but we're changing it back to Star Racing because, man, that's who we started as back in the day, a long time ago. Hey, Chaz. It's good seeing you guys on here, Daryl, Charlie, Scott. Hey, I see some great clients and friends on here. Thank y'all. And a lot of you folks that have recently bought stuff from us and become good clients and friends. I'm thankful for you guys. I wanted to tell you that. Take a minute and say hi, Charlie. Kurt, that's a good name there from back in the day. Charlie and Matt, Dale, Dave. Good to see y'all. Yep, that's another good one. Kenny. Thankful to see these names. I know it's so funny. It sounds like all I talk about is just appreciative and thankfulness. But man, what a career, what a ride that we've had here for 41 years. Thanksgiving next weekend. Hey, Ryan, Mark, next weekend will be exactly 41 years to the day. Thanksgiving week is when Jackie and I moved down here. Well, actually, I moved here and left Jackie in South Carolina because she had a teaching contract in Florence and she couldn't move and break her contract until we were married. So we decided to get married in 1980. And when we got married, then she transferred her elementary teaching job down here to Americus. And she was a school teacher here in Americus for a little while, just for a minute in history. And then, hey, Mary Alice. And it was a great time because I had this vision of having a motorcycle shop, and I have 4 or 5 motorcycles to work on. And then I would have all this work that may come in, and we may be able to do enough to pay the bills and pay for rent and stuff like that. And what ended up happening was, oh my gosh, unbelievable. I had to go to the courthouse and purchase a business license, and they said, how much business do you expect to do in your first year? And I said, I don't know, 25,000 be about right. Well, it was wrong by over 100. And so then the next year I said, okay, we'll do 150, and then it was 250, and it went on and on and on and on, and it ended up going lots and lots of business, and then not much, and then a lot, then not much, then a lot, and then not much. And so we rode a 4-decade roller coaster that many of you have lived through. Some of you youngins haven't seen anything like it, but we have. So, and if you go, let's see which way the graph looks. If you go back and look at tough times and good times, and what I've seen is if you take the roller coaster of the highs and the lows, the good years, the bad years, the good months and the bad months, and you take them and you stretch them out over 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years, it is all going uphill. In other words, it just gets better and better and better. And yeah, we can argue about that. We can have a conversation and talk about the economy, and we can talk about business, but man, we rode through the economic pandemics and the global pandemics, and I'm not saying we're going to make it through all of this, but so far so good. And the guys that have continued to send us work, and the people who and you are right, girl, God has been and is good to me. Whew, I am thankful. I know it sounds like I'm preaching sometime, but goodness gracious, if you should ride in my shoes for a minute and see why I'm so thankful. I mean, Jackie Bryce was the angel God sent to me when we were teenagers. He said, girl, I'm going to hook you to this guy right here. I want you to take care of him for me, and he's going to be rough. He's going to be like a Bronco pony sometimes, and he's going to try and wear you down, but you just got to teach him and lead him, and one day it might be worth it, and I hope that's how we are right now. Anthony, yes, we are blessed. Chad, hey, y'all. But this is Tech Talk Tuesday, so please don't let me bore you with that stuff. I mean, there's another day when I retire here soon. It's getting closer and closer that I'm going to retire. As a matter of fact, I move stuff every day. And we turn down work now, and we're just catching up on a few jobs. And I'm going to do a walkthrough through the shop that I got 10,000 feet here that's all packed full of stuff because we have 3 attics. Let me see how to do that. 3 attics. One over here, this big 5,000 square foot attic. We have 2 attics in the back over that 10,000 square feet. And it took the kids 2 weeks to empty the attics into the floor. So I sold, gave away, threw away enough stuff that covered the floor in the 5,000 square foot shop. Then they brought more stuff down, and then I sold and moved through that. So I am on my 4th load of junk and treasure out of the attics into the floor. And I'm going through it every day, and it's been 21 days in a row, you guys, that I've broken all my records on my phone. You know, on your phone, it's got if you can measure your steps, and I think for 2 or 3 years, my average steps were 2,000 steps a day, which is like a couch potato compared to now, because now I'm doing between 8 and 10,000, and please, steps a day inside this shop. I don't even leave. I go home and have a shower and maybe eat some peanut butter and jelly or something at the house. Hey, Jay, Charles. But please don't hear me complaining. I am thankful. I promise I'm not complaining. But I'm going to take a minute, flip this camera around, and I'm going to walk through and show you a little bit of technical stuff that's happened over the years and talk about the future and talk about what's happening. So let me flip this around. Thank you all for watching. Okay, I'm going to try and be steady. Forgive me if I make you a little seasick right now. All right, I'm going to try and do it. All right, I've got the throttle body for Buck. Buck's my 2003 Road King. It's got a 126 engine in it. We finished the bottom end. We got the heads done. We got the cylinders done. We got the pistons done. I showed you that last week. And I'm putting a modified Borzilla on it. It'll be kind of like a billet cat. No, it'll be kind of like a mega cat, but it'll be made out of a Borzilla. And this engine, we've been piecing it together for years, gathering parts. And upstairs, I told you last week, we found this 126 G2 cover. It's the last one I've ever seen. And the B2 heads are done. And we have the last customer engine that's going out. It's going out west, Midwest. But it's fully polished Milwaukee 8, which has been a serious headache and heartache and Rolaids required. But anyway, it's being finished. We're waiting on one more load of parts to come in tomorrow so we can put it together. Super Stock D Fairlane. That's so awesome. In here, these are about half of the Milwaukee 8 heads and cylinders that I bought on the internet. We put 7 sets in process to get ported and honed, bored and big valves put in. I'm gonna show you about the valves in a minute. But this is the 3rd set that's done. Just finished doing the mill work on them. And the lights are off in here right now, but that's still left on the agenda. I'm gonna move through here and show you what we're working on. This is one of those monster billet heads. That's the last one. Now, as far as engines to build that have to go out, there's one left. That's that polished Milwaukee 8. Now, we are selling our equipment here, and I have a client that's very interested. We're getting close to making a deal. But this DTS dyno goes with it. And what's neat about this is a big 2,000 horsepower automotive-style dyno made for engine use, testing only. And we had a real nice control panel here. And I'm going to try not to keep you guys from wobbling around. And it is DTS, and that company was bought out by Superflow, and it's being remarketed now in a little bit improved fashion. But what I hope the new guy's going to do is take this contraption that we fabricated to put the NHRA SNS Pro Stock 160s on here and hook them up to this dynamometer. And for you guys that don't know what a dynamometer is, it's a torture chamber for your engine. You bolt your engine here, you tie it down, and you rev it wide open, and you measure all the things you can measure and find the weak link and find out how to make it go faster. So we got this big fan that just evacuates this room, and massive amount of wind and volume moves through here. And then we have these 2 giant fans that let the air in the room So it ended up with a lot of pressure in here, differential from outside to inside. And if the lights were on out back, I'd show you how cool that muffler was. But we made a homemade manometer to hook to the exhaust system so that we have an axial fan outside hooked to the exhaust system. And we would pull a little bit of vacuum, not vacuum, but I call it a toe, where it pulled a tiny bit, and you could just measure a little bit of pressure differential in here. And I wanted a couple things. These are controllers for the motors to control the dynamometer. Adjustable speed, drive, feed pump, return pump, exhaust fans, experimental throttle bodies. I mean, 3.5-inch throttle body per cylinder. You can look at this right here. This is one exhaust pipe for one cylinder, right? 2 3/4 exhaust per cylinder. And of course, we measured wide bands on each cylinder and exhaust gas temperature so we could tune the engine accordingly. Here's a couple more experimental throttle bodies, and I want you to see this is no toy. These are 3.5 inches per cylinder. So what is that? 85 millimeters, 83 millimeters. So when you got a 70 millimeter or a 62 or a 58 or a 55 for your Milwaukee 8, these are 80 something each cylinder. So what was interesting about this dyno is we were able to take this engine and turn this engine 10,500 RPM in here, and it was 160 cubic inch V-twin built by S&S, and it was the NHRA Pro Stock engine that's out there being used now. There's 3 generations of it, a Gen 1, Gen 2, and then a Gen 3, and we had it to where I operated the clutch with a little air shifter that I controlled from outside the room, and this engine has so much torque and vibration that it would actually, you could actually snap the drive in half on the dyno. This is brutal. And electronics hate these V-twins, so therefore we had to make these giant rubber isolator connectors. We even had the cylinder head mounts rubber mounted. We had the exhaust system rubber mounted. I gotta show you this exhaust pipe mount. We would take a hose clamp and hold it to the exhaust and then bolt it to the engine and use rubber mounts just to try and make the parts last for a minute. And look, how bad does it vibrate? Well, people ask me all the time, how bad does it vibrate? And I say, go to Home Depot and find the paint shakers and get one paint shaker and clamp it down to the other paint shaker and turn both of them on to 10 and try to hang on. There's some shakers now. It's a miracle this thing lived through it. But what I hope, this is the throttle control, what I hope is my new guys here will build a fixture to fit the Milwaukee 8 to go on this dyno in their facility and be able to develop the Milwaukee 8 engine for the future of hot rod street Harley use, just like we did in the days with S&S when we were doing the 124s, 126s, 145s, 143s, all those cool engines. But that's another piece of the history there that I wanted to share with you guys. Now I'm going to walk back up to the front where I can do a little bit more technical talk. I see Tim, Ray, Thomas. I see you guys are watching. This was a really cool engine we had back in the day. We had S&S built specifically for us. This was the 126. It was just like the 124, except it had a short stroke and a big bore. And it had B2 heads on it. Sold them for a few years, and we had exclusive on them for a while, and then S&S quit making them. But this was one of their best engines because it had a big bore and a short stroke, so it was a lot of fun. The cubic inches gave you the torque, but the stroke allowed us to run RPM. I'm going to have to take a swallow of water here before I vapor lock. I'm going to get my stand to go out a little bit too here. All right, everybody flopping around. Here we go. One more time. Everybody hang on. Don't get excited. I'm still here. All right, there we go. Tech Talk number 68. Here's my bottle of water. Bear with me. We're going to do this. Oh, several people ask me all the time, George, what socks you got on today? I know this is funny. It looks like, well, let me get this one up here. It looks like the Beatles. But it says the Beagles. The Beagles. Anyway, one of my little deals is I wear some crazy socks every day. Hey, Alan, Timothy. All right, you might have to sign off, but look, I'm retiring. Matter of fact, 7 days, and I'm going to Tennessee. 7 days. That's right. I'll be here for 7 more days. I'm going to go for Thanksgiving and visit with my family in Tennessee, and I'm going to come back a little bit just to catch up on stuff because I still have a lot of stuff here, and I got to sell it and move it, and we're going to have to sell the building, but we are going to be finished with the jobs we've promised out and the work that we have on the table by the time Thanksgiving comes around. All right, I'm going to sit down a minute so I can show you this cool part. Get the stool, I'm coming. All right, I'm back. Alan, Timothy, Vincent, Randy. Okay. This is a Milwaukee 8 intake valve, stock, right out of an engine that has 10,000 miles on it. Winter Star Racing socks come out. They'll make you go faster. Yeah, that's a good point right there. I like that idea. Star Racing socks would be cool. Hey, you know what? Everybody can make socks now. Back in the day, we used to just pull the pants leg down over them. Nobody knew they were white or black, and that was about it. But what I want to tell you about this, very interesting. This is what I fear for the future of the Milwaukee 8 because they did a great job making lightweight parts, lightweight valves, lightweight retainers. These are stamped steel. These little keepers are stamped steel. But I want you to look at this as what worries me is the spring pulls on this nice and tight, but I hope I can get a good enough video to see this. But this, you know, we've seen some dropped valves on the Milwaukee 8s, the 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. And I am disappointed and concerned about this because our hot rod industry is selling oversized valves, stainless steel, titanium, and they're replacing the retainers, and they're building new keepers, but they're still on this 7-degree angle of interface between the retainer and the keepers, okay? And this is scary. So at Star Racing, the way we fix it is just like we would Pro Stock. Now, let me tell you about Pro Stock versus Street. Pro Stock is not considered anything like Street, but what you learn in Pro Stock is how for the reliability to last at maximum RPM and extreme use. And you can learn so much for a street engine off of that because you don't have to turn it hard. You don't have to make everything maximum. You can have back way off and create a bunch of power and reliability. So let me share you what we did about this. And I'm going to take this out so you can see a couple things. The valves on the market and the stock valves have triple grooves in them, okay? And the keepers have 3 beads. But there is no clamping below the beads, in between the beads, or above the beads. This is nothing but an assembly of raised beads. So when you put it on the valve, yeah, dexterity is something that you develop when you're a child, and the older you get, the longer it gets away from you, the worse it gets. I wish you could see this up close, but there was so much clearance between the keeper and this bead And you don't want it to be pinching the valve where it'll break the valve off. But the other one on it. And then we have a pair of keepers on the valves. Now this is everything that's for sale right now. And if you squeeze this as tight as you can, like I've got it mashed where these keepers are actually pressing each other. And the valve is not clamped, it is not tight. This valve will spin like it's got a bearing. And when it's running down the road, this valve is spinning. And we're going to see failures over time, over miles, because this interface between this retainer, these keepers, and this valve is made by one company that Hurley hires, which is some vendor. This retainer is made by some company that Hurley hires as a vendor. And these keepers are made by a company that Hurley hires as a vendor. I'm not bagging on Hurley. Look, they're having a hard enough time trying to make $1 and sell some motorcycles. But these are just things. If you're going to do what I have done for my whole life is figure out how to make this stuff go faster and last longer, you got to kind of reinvent this wheel. And I did not invent this improvement. This is just pro stock NASCAR endurance racing improvements that you need. Now, endurance racing is a little bit half and half between going to Sturgis and the drag strip. It's like endurance is like going at 90% maximum power all the time for a long time. Now, this is the Star Racing version of the improvement for this. All right, it's a real high-quality titanium retainer. It's got machined steel keepers that are machined to fit, and this valve is our Star Racing valve. It's a 2.5 millimeter over, and it's designed with the shape for flow and weight so that it weighs the same thing as this 40 millimeter valve. This is a 42.5. So the fact that it's bigger and the same weight, we don't put any more stress on the valve train. But what's interesting about this is this retainer and these keepers are machined to fit. Like this is just on here, and you have to unsnap it. Did you see? And the keepers are a perfect fit. They don't fall off, but they're not pinching in the groove. The groove is there to tell you where to clamp it. This little bead on this keeper, oh, I wish I could get a little bit better focus. There you go. See that little bead on the keeper? That matches the groove in the valve. Everything below this bead is a clamp. It clamps this valve stem tight. I know this might be old school to you guys, but I just want you to see. What we're doing is we're clamping this valve with no moving parts. This keeper is clamped to this valve with no regard to this groove or the bead, so we will not be breaking off the valve in this groove. We will also not be spinning these parts until this fails. Last thing about it that's really important to me is the stock groove, the stock keeper has got 3 grooves. The stock valve has 3 grooves. 3 grooves. And if you'll look, there's no flat area for the keeper to clamp this valve. So the only thing that's holding this valve hanging on for dear life is the fact that these beads, these little 3 beads, are hanging on to the top of this when it's going on lift, and it's hanging on the bottom of this groove when it's coming off the cam onto the closing side of the cam. So the whole time, this keeper is working this valve over, going like this, up and down, up and down, up and down, because it's so loose. Oh my, I almost turned the phone over. It's so loose, it will not stay clamped. Another thing, the stockers and the aftermarket ones that are for sale have this cross section right here that makes this keeper extraordinarily thin. There is no material between the inside of this groove. Not much material between the inside of this groove, between the beads and the outside, because this keeper is standing up at a 7-degree angle, where our machined steel keepers have a tight clamp fit below the bead and is set on an 8-degree angle here. And what does an 8-degree angle do is it increases the cross section about 12%. And I've seen these split. I've seen them break. I've seen these break off. I've seen this drop valves. And since we changed over to the NASCAR high RPM, high quality, or the pro stock car drag racing style set up with titanium, we're not the only company with titanium retainers, but we're the only company that I know of that has titanium retainers that are machined for an 8-degree interface, which a 7-degree looks like this, and it'll pull through like a wine, like a cork in a wine bottle. An 8-degree is like this, and it will not pull through. So that's just some stuff that I wanted to share with you guys. And it's in a 4-valve. Somebody asked about how big it is. Yeah, this is like 1.7 inches. But there's 2 intakes in each cylinder, and there's 2 exhausts in each cylinder because it's a 4-valve. All right, I'm going to flip this back over to you guys. Thank y'all so much for watching and paying attention. I wanted to tell you that my time is up. I see I wasted a lot of time telling you about how do the keepers butt together. If they do, you could machine them. Who wants to do that? But you could machine the keepers where they don't butt. But the problem is the stock keepers try to hang on right here in these grooves, and that's not what you want. You want the keeper to clamp the valve, and the groove and the bead is so you know where the retainer goes and you know where the install height of the spring is, not to hang on for dear life. That's old school. That's how they all used to do them. Big block Chevrolets, Fords, Chryslers, all those old cars did that. But a long time ago, the 4-cylinder market factory, Kawasaki ZX14, ZX10, the Busas, GSXRs, 1100s, 1000s, those really fast high RPM bikes. Kawasaki had some ZX6s that were 15,000 RPM with steel springs, but all of them came with a single lock, top lock. And people say, well, what about the area above the valve? What if you cut that off? What happens? Nothing. This doesn't do anything. The only thing the top part above this groove is for the rocker arm to push on. That's the only thing it's for. I'll clip it all together one more time so you can see how cool this is. This retainer is made to fit our PSI springs. And our springs will be able to handle a bunch of lift and a ton of spring pressure. So putting this all back together with the top lock and our retainer, you just put a little snug on it and it is assembled. And this spring working in here, working, it keeps this really tight, and there's no movement. There's nothing to give. There's no wobbling. The top of the valve, the retainer doesn't wobble anymore. So when the retainer stops wobbling, because that spring is just beating it to dickens, it will break the top of this valve off. It will also break the valve spring. When you give a valve spring room to do this, like the stock setup does, the spring is going to break. How many of you have read about on the internet or seen in person a M8 break a valve spring? Lots. There's several reasons. Material, fast manufacturing, high production. They have to buy at a cheap price in order to keep the price down. Low cost. But I want you to see this one more time. This is as tight as I can make it. And the spring, oh, I wish I could show this. Okay. The spring, when the spring is working on this, it's doing this. And it'll do that enough times in a day, in a week, in a month, that it will break. This spring will snap off, the retainer will break, the keepers will break, and the valve will break. Hate to be a doom dealer, but there it is. Thank you all for Tech Talk. 68 in a row. I'd say I got one more to do in Americus before I go. Next Tuesday, we'll still be in Americus, Georgia. My family's in Tennessee. I'm going to go there one day, but I'm planning on going maybe Wednesday of next week, which will be 7 days, and go visit for a few days. And then when they get tired of me again, then they're going to ship me back to Americus, Georgia for me to finish this mess I made here for 41 years. Thank y'all. God bless. I'm happy though. Thank y'all. Next week, stay tuned.